This is Gerhard Schroeder with his good friend Vladimir Putin. He negotiated a pact with Gazprom, the Russian energy giant, that many people thought, some of you included, no doubt, was not in Germany's national interest. And shortly thereafter, he accepted a top job with Gazprom. And here's Richard Perle, who was indispensable in taking the United States to war in Iraq, despite having only a minor position in the Bush administration. And Larry Summers, who helped lead the world to the brink of economic collapse. Now, what do these players in this nice family photo have in common? They represent new means of wielding power and influence. They represent a new breed of power brokers. In the old world, power and influence was more clearly defined. This is quite easy to understand. This is the power elite as defined by C. Wright Mills 50 years ago in the United States. But today, there are all manner of think tank, consultancy, media, governing, and other organizations, and power brokers perform multiple roles across them. So it's not always easy to tell where one organization ends and the other begins. In the old world, it would have been unthinkable for the leader of one sovereign state to buy the leader of another sovereign state, let alone the world's third largest industrialized democracy, Germany. In the old world, the chain of command, the military chain of command, commanded. But just recently, the top U.S. commander in Afghanistan used Rolling Stone magazine to criticize White House war policy. Months earlier, his deputy put out new directives via a Washington think tank, again, apparently skirting the military chain of command. Today, think tanks act as news outlets as entertainment corporations, and corporations daily stand in for government. Blackwater of Iraqi fame, running around, remember, shooting civilians, the private military contractor, not only changed its name to XE, but it split into multiple entities so that not even the government officials to whom it reports necessarily know who or what they're dealing with, or they can say they don't know. All this accountability lends itself to deniability, and here's this is the government for sale, right? Because did you know that 3/4 of people working for the federal government today are actually private contractors? And this is not just food service and IT service. This is government functions. Contractors lead intelligence and military operations. They manage bailouts. A real question is, who is the government? Government meetings are called, and only contractors are present. And this brings me to the issue of deniability. So here is our today's power broker with his multiple business cards representing multiple roles. If questioned by, say, a government auditor in one role, he can always say, well, I was playing this other role when I did that action. All this ambiguity lends itself to deniability. And we're in an accountability-challenged era, the era of shadow elites. Shadow elites are the top power brokers in a new system of power and influence that debuted over the past several decades. And if we don't understand this new system of power and influence, how can we navigate it? How can we have input into the decisions that affect our finances, our security, and the wars that are fought in our names? Now, how did we get to this place? There are 4 transformational developments that led to the shadow elite era. The first is privatization and the restructuring of government, which gained major impetus in the Reagan and Thatcher era, and the fruits of which we see after a long intensification, the fruits of which we see in the contracting out of federal government, the massive contracting out of federal government in the United States today. The second transformational development is the end of the Cold War, which opened up new spaces for private players, often working on behalf of it's not clear whom, to play major roles in public policy and to influence major public decisions. The third transformational development, the advent of new information technologies, not only enabled you to send me an email after this presentation, but enabled new unregulated financial transactions, restructured the media, and paved the way to a fourth transformational development, the embrace of truthiness. With truthiness, it's the appearance of the truth that matters, not the truth or facts themselves. Truthiness enables people to play with their identities. It enables them to change their appearances regardless of fact or track record. So, truthiness. The interaction of these four major developments has created a new model of today's power broker who looks like this. So today's power brokers themselves are the pinnacle, the pillars of power. Power and influence resides not so much in organizations, but in social networks that connect them and work in and around them. The influence of power brokers themselves depends on their ability to blur and blend official and private. And yet, the modern democratic state has depended on separation of powers and clear-cut boundaries. But today's top power brokers, the shadow elites, break or test both the rules of the state, those would be the rules of accountability, and the rules of the free market, those are the rules of competition, and they intertwine official and private power. And these elite networks are converging all over the world, and I know this because wherever I talk about shadow elites, people give me new examples. Now, how did I come to this conclusion? It was actually working in Eastern Europe for 30 years that led me to develop this framework. I started as a social anthropologist in Poland under communism and martial law in the early 1980s. I was 7 at the time. And I watched how people flex the rules and mobilize their social networks. Flexing rules and mobilizing social networks enabled people to survive in an economy of scarcity. And it also enabled the official economy itself to function. And when this command structure, this top-down structure collapsed and nothing else was put in its place, it was these ways of operating and social networks that rose to the surface, intertwining official and private power. So the top power brokers, these elite networks, placed their people wherever necessary to achieve their agendas, in the top of banks, government agencies, in consultancies, media, and so forth, all the while to achieve their own agendas, though not those necessarily of the organizations on whose behalf they supposedly were working. Now, at first I thought this was merely a product of a disintegrating command system, a command system that lost its command. But consider this, this is the intertwining of state and private power. But consider this man, Richard Pearl. He played a major role in taking the United States to war in Iraq. He has been called the unofficial father of the war in Iraq, despite having no major position in the Bush administration. He's not a puppet master, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but he had something that he wanted to achieve, and he set out with a group of like-minded people over 10 years to achieve that agenda in ways that are just now being understood. Now, how did they do it? What was the modus operandi that enabled them to achieve their goal? Let me just give you a brief window into that. This is the circle around Richard Perle. Perle is at the center, and this is a snapshot of what I call the neocon core. It's a tight-knit group of people that has been working together, some for as long as 30 years, to achieve their agendas for changing American foreign policy, and always via military might. This particular chart represents just a snapshot of some of the organizations around the edges that they set up in the 1990s with the express purpose of getting U.S. policy to overthrow Saddam Hussein and thereby helping to reshape the Middle East. You can see that the same group of players is intertwined with each other in multiple ways. So the same group populates multiple organizations. They also, during the Bush administration, this is roughly, again, the same group, populated arenas of governing and government and quasi-government positions. And they operated through a cross-agency clique that extended beyond the government. It was a government private clique that enabled them to achieve their objectives, and they overrode otherwise relevant units of government. So, for example, in the Department of Defense, they set up two separate units that would bypass otherwise relevant intelligence units of government. Shadow elites supplant the otherwise ways of operating, official ways of operating. They also create information. Information is a key to how they operate. They either supplant information, they either create their own versions of official information and seek to get it branded as the most official, or they secure official information and guard it to themselves. So in that regard, this man, Ahmad Chalabi, was key. They created him by funding him, getting him sponsored in the United States in the 1990s, and he manufactured information he and his people creating a supposed link between Saddam Hussein and 9/11. So while he created this and his people created this bogus information, it was the neocon core, members of the neocon core dispersed throughout government, who got it branded as official and also disseminated it through the media. They disseminated together with some of their associates. Because unlike experts of the past and power brokers of the past, shadow elites must brand their message. And here is Richard Perle advocating and justifying the invasion of Iraq. As a number of people that I spoke with, well-placed in government to observe the neocon core and how they operated, told me, there's well-established machinery for taking the country to war. In this case, that machinery didn't get used. Let's take a look at the financial crisis. Here's the Committee to Save the World in 1999 on the cover of Time magazine. Alan Greenspan, chairman of the U.S. Federal Reserve, flanked by Robert Rubin and Larry Summers, Treasury officials in the Clinton administration. Now, shadow elites espouse ideologies, and in this case, they were the proponents of an economic ideology, aggressively promoting it all through the 1990s. They not only opposed regulating derivatives, these derivatives that have now helped to bring down the world economy, but they even opposed discussion about regulating these derivatives, so that even people who were in the administration but were not part of their exclusive circle were eliminated from discussion. They helped to shape the rules of the game to the advantage of their inner circle and a tightly knit, intertwined Washington Wall Street circle. Larry Summers went from being Treasury official to leading Harvard University, where he became world famous for his flame out as president, to landing a top economic policy job in the Obama administration, just as policies over which he had earlier presided were helping to bring down the entire world economy. He fails upwards. Unlike for the rest of us, the track records of shadow elites don't track. Failure does not preclude a future seat at the deciders' table. Now, what do these players have in common? Well, they're flexible. And we all today live in a world of flex. We have flex time, flex appeal. I've had several offers of flex marriage, but I'm still hoping for the real thing. And I have a Flex Perks credit card. The top players, the top shadow elite players, are called Flexians. Flexians perform multiple and not disclosed roles, overlapping roles, roles that influence each other and are not fully disclosed across organization to serve their own agendas, not necessarily of the organizations for which they are working. We also have flex nets when people work together in a circle. We have flex nets. And the Pearl Circle is an archetypal flex net. Now, who or what can combat this new phenomenon, this new shadow elite era? Well, investigators, auditors are simply no match. They have limited jurisdiction. Investigative reporting is being gutted. They're no match for these shadow elites who have global reach. They're all over the map, literally. But what we can do is learn how to identify them. And I want to give you a few, that's the first step, and I want to give you just a few questions that we need to ask in that regard. Number one is are the players who is involved more important than the action itself, or just as important as the action? That is, would the action never happen were it not for the players? Two, are the particular players who are involved, are they also the ones, players with exclusive information, are they also the ones who are branding it for the public? And then also shutting out alternative voices and authorities. Three, is who is involved, who is he, and who funds him? Are they difficult questions to answer, or who is he and who funds him, difficult questions to answer? And finally, is the boundary between official and private, is that clear? And I'd like to leave you with this thought, because it was said to me by a neoconservative close to the neocon core, but it could have been said about any number of shadow elites. There is no conflict of interest because we define the interest. Thank you.